Prince's last Diddy recording played in trial.
The moment Prince's voice echoed through the courtroom, everything changed. Diddy's calm facade shattered. His tightly held composure slipped as the haunting voice of the legendary artist filled the room. A voice from beyond the grave, delivering a message no one expected. What was on that recording that shook one of music's most powerful men to his core? Day 3 of this explosive trial has just unveiled bombshell evidence, the kind that no one saw coming. And now, the shockwaves are tearing through Hollywood.
Yes, he said he would get physical. The one male guy who did things with Diddy and Cassie, that he witnessed him get physical. Don. So again, we talked about how the domestic charges aren't, what he's being, what he's on trial for. But boy, it's stacking up. And I feel that the jury is going to take that into consideration.
The first Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swing. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in the.
Day 3 began, just like the two before it. Reporters scrambled for prime seats. Celebrities slipped in quietly through side entrances. Legal teams shuffled their papers with the calm routine of professionals. But today, something felt different. The room wasn't just full, it was charged, electric. Security was tight, but unusually so. Guards lined every corner, and for the first time since the trial began, 4 officers took position directly behind Diddy's defense table. That had never happened before. A court insider later revealed they received special instructions that morning, though no one would say why. Diddy entered looking every bit the star, sharp navy suit, calm smile, a nod to his supporters in the gallery. He carried the confidence of someone who believed he was still in control. His legal team swarmed around him like armor, whispering strategy as they took their seats. But what they didn't notice, or perhaps underestimated, was the quiet buzz happening across the aisle. At the prosecution's table, 2 tech specialists were setting up unfamiliar equipment. Wires, a device no one had seen on previous days. They ran silent tests while the lead prosecutor kept stealing glances at Diddy, not with concern, but with anticipation. Something was coming, something big. The whispers started before the judge even entered. One reporter later told me, people were texting across the room trying to guess what the prosecution was about to drop. You could feel it building. When the judge finally entered, he opened with a sharp warning. Regardless of what evidence is presented today, this courtroom will maintain order. Any disruptions will result in immediate removal. Eyes darted around the room. Everyone sensed it. This wasn't going to be a typical day. The prosecution began methodically, recapping witness statements, connecting timelines. It felt routine, until the lead prosecutor stopped mid-sentence. Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution would like to present critical audio evidence recently authenticated by our forensic team. She stepped forward holding a small black device. The defense immediately erupted, objecting, claiming they hadn't been properly informed. A tense sidebar followed. Diddy's lawyers gestured wildly, voices raised in protest, but the judge remained firm. The evidence had been disclosed during discovery. Objection overruled. Then came the moment that changed everything. The prosecutor turned to the courtroom. What you're about to hear, she said, is the final private recording made by Prince Rogers Nelson before his death. Silence. Utter, complete silence. Journalists froze mid-typing. The gallery stopped breathing. Prince, the icon, the legend, was about to speak from beyond the grave. Diddy's lead attorney gripped his client's arm. You could see the color drain from Diddy's face. It was like watching someone unravel in real time. His entire legal team leaned in, whispering furiously, panic flickering across their expressions. And as the device was connected to the courtroom audio system, before a single sound played, the power in the room shifted. Everyone felt it. Diddy knew what was coming, and in that moment, so did we.
Trying to listen. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff that I've heard and seen already. I'm really trying to connect the dots here and think like, damn, what if Prince was letting what if he caught wind of some, I'll just say allegedly, stuff that Diddy might have been doing. That seems to be like, I ain't talking about consensual things, I'm talking about illegal things or whatever. But I'm just like, would Diddy be that dumb to not think that Prince, this celebrity, has cameras in his house as well? So I'm just trying to think, because if Prince has cameras and he's recording stuff, you know, to get some dirt on Diddy. I don't know. I feel like Diddy, with all his cameras that he allegedly had, or no, they actually found cameras.
That I don't know, right? What I know is that he was really health conscious. He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol. I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, you know, so, you know, that also really concerned me, because it made me think that, wow, so you mean you do all these things to take care of yourself and you die so young?
What you're about to hear, the prosecutor announced, was recovered from Prince's private vault. The courtroom erupted. Whispers filled the air, people leaned in, eyes wide. Journalists scrambled to capture the moment on their phones. This wasn't just another piece of evidence, this was Prince, speaking, from beyond the grave. The prosecutor explained, the recording was made just weeks before Prince's death in 2016. It had never been heard by the public. Prince made this as insurance, she said, a personal account of what he witnessed with his own eyes. Then the audio began. A woman in the third row covered her mouth and quietly began to cry. It wasn't just the shock of hearing his voice, it was how he sounded. This wasn't the confident, flamboyant superstar the world knew. His voice was low, careful, almost frightened. I'm making this recording because I don't know who to trust anymore, Prince began. The room fell utterly silent. You could hear his breath between sentences. No music, no performance, just Prince, raw, unfiltered, and alone. And then, he started naming names, dates, locations, events. At the center of it all, Diddy. Prince described parties at Diddy's homes in the Hamptons and Miami, the very same events 3 earlier witnesses had testified about, but this time it wasn't rumor, it wasn't secondhand, it was Prince confirming everything. I watched Diddy's face as the audio played. In a matter of seconds, his confident mask crumbled, his eyes darted, his lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but Diddy didn't move. He just stared forward. Frozen, Prince's voice intensified. What happens at these parties isn't just wrong, it's criminal, he said. I've seen how they operate. I've seen who gets hurt. Each word hit like a hammer. This wasn't just corroboration. It was a first-hand confession from someone who had nothing to gain and couldn't be silenced. You can't intimidate the dead. You can't cross-examine a ghost. Then came the moment that left the room breathless. Prince detailed a private party from December 2015. He named guests, including 2 celebrities who had previously denied ever attending. He described private rooms upstairs, the setup, the behavior. Every detail matched what the prosecution had laid out in their opening arguments. You could hear a pin drop. Even the judge was leaning in, visibly gripped by the testimony. I tried to talk to him about it, Prince said near the end of the tape. I told him this had to stop. He just laughed and told me to mind my business if I wanted to keep working in this industry. At that exact moment, the prosecutor paused the recording. The silence was deafening. Every head in the room turned to Diddy. He was pale. His hands, which had been steady the entire trial, were now trembling. His lead attorney quickly slid a yellow legal pad in front of him, trying to shield the jury from seeing his reaction. But it was too late. Everyone had already seen it. The moment Prince named him, the moment his voice from the grave echoed through that courtroom, Diddy's carefully built wall of confidence collapsed completely.
Became such a big deal back then is ever since my 3rd album, I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. And that's kind of the situation we're in right today. They're not going to exist much longer. But it's not like we're against them or anything like that. The idea is that we find better ways of working with one another. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they own the thing.
Jesse Ventura on the witness stand for a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs' desires. "I'm always ready to freak off," one message said.
She was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009, "I'm always ready to freak off." There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
What stunned the courtroom wasn't just what Prince said. It was what happened to Diddy as the words played. For 2 full days, he had been a fortress. Accusers had pointed fingers directly at him. Damaging photos were shown to the jury. Through it all, Diddy sat stone-faced, whispering calmly to his attorneys, never flinching, never cracking. But the moment Prince's voice resumed, everything changed. The transformation was immediate and impossible to ignore. Diddy's lead attorney, a seasoned defender of Hollywood's elite, gently placed a hand on his client's forearm, a subtle gesture meant to calm him, but Diddy snapped. He yanked his arm away with such force that he knocked over a glass of water on the defense table. The spill startled several jurors. They exchanged glances. They'd noticed it too. The man who built his empire on cool confidence was falling apart. A courtroom sketch artist later told reporters, "I've never seen someone's body language shift so drastically in the middle of testimony." Diddy's breathing grew heavy, erratic. His shoulders rose and fell rapidly. Even from the back row, you could see the panic setting in. His eyes darted across the room like he was searching for exits. The judge, a veteran of countless high-profile trials, never took his eyes off Diddy. He saw what was happening. He recognized the signs. Diddy couldn't sit still. He shifted in his seat, tugged at his collar, then reached up with trembling fingers and loosened his tie. He leaned into his legal team, whispering with such urgency that 3 of his attorneys leaned in, forming a tight circle around him. And then Prince's voice struck again. He was describing a private gathering in Beverly Hills. He gave a date, March 9th, 2016, then an address, one already confirmed by prosecutors in earlier evidence. The second Prince said that address. Diddy stood up, not slowly, not deliberately. He shot to his feet like he'd been yanked by an invisible force. 4 security officers immediately closed in. Diddy's attorneys reached for him, tugging at his jacket, trying to pull him back down into his chair. Their faces were filled with panic. One lawyer leaned in, frantically whispering. Another physically positioned himself between Diddy and the jury box. But the recording kept playing. Prince described what he saw behind closed doors that night, behavior that matched the most serious allegations the prosecution had laid out. Diddy's legal team was in full damage control, trying anything to calm their client. And then, it happened. Diddy snapped. "That's a lie," he shouted, his voice exploding through the courtroom. The outburst was so loud, a reporter in the front row jumped. "He wasn't even there. That never happened." Chaos followed. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order, order in this court." He turned sharply toward the defense table. "Mr. Combs, control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt." The room went dead silent, except for Prince's voice, still playing, still testifying from beyond the grave. And in that moment, the prosecution's strategy became crystal clear. They'd held back this recording deliberately. They waited until Diddy let his guard down, until day 3, when he thought he had control. Then they played the one piece of evidence powerful enough to break him, and it worked perfectly.
The other things that the Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-off.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So...
she is out of the freak-off scene. She is... when she's with Kid Cudi, or allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-off if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, she still loves Diddy. Diddy was jealous about her.
Oh, yeah, because that was another thing that the prosecutors were trying to do, is show that that they had a very jealous relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, like Kim Porter, Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter, trying to show that, like, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, like, this was a real relationship.
It was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right, final story of the week. Final story of the week. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few rumors flying around, was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of freak-offs, why are they in hiding? Are they in hiding though?
I don't think they're in hiding. I just think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way.
Even if you're a white party, just having a lot of fun at, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be linked in any way.
No, and that's why, all those people, there's a few people I think that have come forward and been like, I didn't see any of this freak-off stuff.
After the judge slammed the gavel and restored order, the prosecution pressed play once more. Prince's voice returned to the courtroom, steady, clear, and more damning than anyone expected. But this time, it wasn't just vague accusations. It was direct, detailed, devastating. Prince revealed he'd been documenting disturbing behavior in the music industry for years. "I keep everything," he said. "Dates, times, who was there, what happened. I've been doing this since 2007." Gasps rippled through the room. Legal experts glanced at each other. This wasn't speculation. It was systematic record keeping by one of the most meticulous minds in music. Then came the first bombshell. Prince described specific parties held at Diddy's homes. "These aren't just parties," he explained. "They're orchestrated. I watched him isolate young artists from their teams, get them alone, and put them in situations they couldn't say no to." He named a particular property in Beverly Hills, then described the room layout in chilling detail. Floor plans the court had already seen. Every word matched evidence previously entered into the record. You could hear a pin drop as Prince's voice painted a disturbing picture. "They come in thinking this is their big break," he said. "By the time they realize what's really happening, they're already trapped." Prince claimed he personally witnessed at least 7 artists in compromising situations. Then came the second allegation, a confrontation. "I approached him at the Grammy after party in 2016, Prince revealed. "I told him I knew what was happening and that it had to stop." Diddy's alleged response? "You might be Prince, but you're not untouchable." Prince paused, then added, "I took that as a threat." At the defense table, Diddy's attorneys scrambled, scribbling notes, whispering urgently. They hadn't seen this coming, and it wasn't over. The third and most damaging allegation, money. Prince described hush payments made to individuals who agreed to stay silent, naming exact amounts: $2 million to one person, $1.3 million to another. Every figure matched financial records the prosecution had introduced earlier in the trial. "I've seen the payments," Prince said. "I've seen the ND as they signed. This isn't just reckless behavior, it's a calculated system." His tone shifted, more somber now, more personal. "I'm making this recording because I'm afraid to say it out loud. The power structure protects men like him. No one wants to believe what happens behind closed doors." Then came the final words, the ones that sent chills through every person in that courtroom. "If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people. This isn't just about protecting myself. It's about protecting everyone who's never been able to speak up." And just like that, silence. Prince's voice faded. The recording stopped, but no one moved. No one whispered. The prosecution had just pulled off something no one thought possible. They had made Prince, a man no longer alive, their most powerful witness. The lead prosecutor rose, looked straight at the judge, and said quietly, "No further questions, Your Honor." She didn't need to say another word. Prince had spoken for everyone who couldn't.
They have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there, and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through, but I think that's something that you think about on both sides, you know, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, you know, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. Seeing him taking notes from the beginning, I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages, so he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand 2 to 3 days, so here we are.
In just 7 seconds, Diddy's courtroom outburst changed everything. The moment Prince's recording cut off, Diddy's legal team went into full-blown crisis mode. His lead attorney jumped to his feet, voice unsteady. Your Honor, we respectfully request a 15-minute recess to consult with our client. But the desperation in his voice was obvious, and the judge wasn't having it. Request denied. We'll proceed with the presentation of evidence, he said coldly, shooting a direct warning at Diddy. I expect no further disruptions. That alone sent a message. Control was no longer in Diddy's hands. His legal team looked stunned. These were attorneys who charged $1,500 an hour, used to having their motions granted without question. But today, the power in the room had shifted. Nothing was going their way. On the other side of the courtroom, the prosecution team kept their composure, but barely. The lead prosecutor remained stoic, but her second chair allowed the briefest smile when Diddy erupted. Then a quick glance passed between them, a look that said, it worked. They hadn't just expected this reaction, they had engineered it. A legal analyst behind me leaned over to his colleague and whispered, this is catastrophic. They spent 2 days building him up as calm, composed, innocent. That just shattered in front of the jury. The judge addressed the jurors directly. You are instructed to disregard the defendant's outburst. Emotional reactions are not evidence. But every trial lawyer knows, once a jury sees something, they can't unsee it. 3 jurors couldn't take their eyes off Diddy. They watched his every move now, no longer through the lens of sympathy, but suspicion. Court security wasn't taking any chances either. 2 additional officers moved closer to the defense table. One stood directly behind Diddy's chair, close enough to intervene in a heartbeat. The rest of the day, brutal. The prosecution pressed forward with damning precision. They presented financial records that matched the exact payouts Prince had named. They showed text messages from witnesses describing the same events Prince laid out in the recording. Diddy sat there, sweating through his tailored suit. His hands trembled. His face, once confident and unreadable, now looked cornered and exhausted. At one point, his attorney handed him a legal pad, likely to give him something to hold. Diddy barely acknowledged it. When an assistant offered him water, he declined. By mid-afternoon, he looked physically ill. Then came the final gut punch. Diddy's lawyers filed an emergency motion, a last-ditch attempt to get Prince's recording thrown out. Their argument, it was potentially manipulated and impossible to authenticate, since Prince could no longer verify it. But everyone in the courtroom knew the truth. This was panic, plain and simple. Emergency motions like this aren't filed unless a legal team has no other options left. One veteran legal analyst shook his head as people filed out of the courtroom. This is the moment everyone will remember, he said. This is when the defense lost control, and maybe the whole case. A court reporter nearby, even more blood, covered of celebrity trials, I've never seen a case collapse this fast, this completely in a single day. But here's what made the moment even more devastating. It wasn't random, it was a perfectly timed trap. Sources later revealed that the prosecution had Prince's recording ready from day one, but they waited. They held it back deliberately until Diddy felt safe, comfortable, in control. Why? Because they knew his pattern. They'd spent months studying Diddy's past court appearances. He always maintained control during the first 48 hours, but after that, cracks began to show. The prosecution timed their bombshell for the exact moment he'd be most vulnerable. They weren't building a case, they were building a psychological ambush. Everything had been choreographed. For 4 months, they authenticated Prince's recording, bringing in not 1, but 3 forensic audio experts. Every second of that tape was verified to withstand any challenge. They rehearsed the moment they'd play it, practiced how to pause, when to glance at the defense, how to keep their faces neutral when Diddy inevitably exploded. It was theater, with legal stakes. And Prince? He was the perfect witness. He couldn't be cross-examined, he couldn't be silenced, he had no motive, no agenda. His voice came from beyond, cutting through years of silence with authority no living witness could match. Even the timing of the reveal, day 3, was strategic. Media coverage of high-profile trials typically dips after the opening statements. But by dropping this recording on day 3, the prosecution reignited a firestorm of headlines. They didn't just influence the jury, they seized the public narrative. When the court finally adjourned, the contrast between the two legal teams said it all. The prosecution packed up calmly, exchanging quiet, satisfied glances. Diddy's team looked rattled, hunched over laptops, flipping through legal texts, whispering urgently into phones. The illusion of control was gone. Diddy entered the day as a powerful music mogul battling accusations. He ended it as a man unraveling, watching his carefully built empire crack under the weight of a dead man's voice. And as day 3 closed, one thing was clear. Prince's testimony had done what no court filing, no allegation, no photo ever could. It shattered the myth. The trial resumes tomorrow, but nothing will be the same. And tonight, the question haunting the music industry isn't just what happens to Diddy. It's what else is in Prince's private vault. Who else did he name? What other recordings are waiting to surface? Because if today proved anything, it's that the dead are finally speaking, and the world is listening.